Widow is directed by Kate Shortland and stars Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and a ton of other people in the film. And it tells a story after Civil War where Black Widow is on the run from the government, and after a quick visit from Taskmaster, she is brought into a fight in which involves her adopted kind of family, in which they had to team up all together as one family to try and go up against the organization that tore apart their lives and put them through hell. Now, in my opinion, Black Widow is a good Marvel Cinematic Universe film that actually works, in my opinion. I know a lot of people seem to come out of this film thinking it doesn't work, and in some ways I can understand that, and most specifically Taskmaster, which I'll get into later. But for the most part, I did find myself enjoying this film, I think a little more than I thought I would, because one, the trailers were vague enough and were standard and fun enough for me to go into the movie blind and just waiting to see what they have. And is it worth the wait? Kind of. But since I watched a bunch of other films this year now, and Black Widow is still a pretty fun movie, I still found myself having a good time at the theater. Scarlett Johansson does a very good job. I think a lot of people are giving her performance a little more slack, in my opinion, and her character a little more slack, in my opinion. Her characterization here and acting in this film is really strong. I did find myself caring about her and trying to see her reunite and rekindle some sort of human element with her family, whether that's be with her sister, her adopted mother and father. It's very interesting and actually pretty cool to see how it all plays out. In the opening of the film, it makes that entire second act in which these characters finally come together work all the more for it. And I gotta say, the opening act, the opening scene, and the credit scene in the beginning is fantastic. I love it. I love the opening scene so much. This is a very well shot movie. In fact, in my opinion, this is probably one of the best looking Marvel Cinematic Universe films. The cinematography was beautiful. I loved the way it was shot. The action set pieces were very exhilarating. In fact, I was able to care about these characters from the beginning. Especially Elena, played by Florence Pugh, who does a really good job in this film and is actually one of the major highlights in my opinion. It all elevates the action much further because I'm able to care about these characters when they're in these dangerous situations. And I understand the conflict that they have with one another and against the villain. Now, onto the villains. They are very forgettable. They are like Malekith, Thor the Dark World's bad. And Thor the Dark World, in my opinion, is a fine enough movie, but it's my least favorite in the MCU. These guys make Malekith look like Thanos in comparison. My God. The main villain that's in charge of the Red Room, the Black Widow organization, only has one major scene. And that's it. And then he's done. And Taskmaster himself, or herself, or they self, is okay. I get the twist in terms of an emotional core, in terms of storytelling purposes. I could see how this could work for some people and how it could not. I'm not a Taskmaster fan, so it did not bother me that much. My problem was the predictability of the revelation. And I won't spoil it here, but if you watch the movie, it does come across as kind of predictable in the way it was set up throughout the film. But other than that, my major problem with this film, not just the villains, is that I don't see any purpose for this film to exist in Phase 4. I could see it having a purpose in Phase 3, but apart from the post-credits scene and Florence Pugh's character, I don't see this movie having a purpose in Phase 4. But in my opinion, it really doesn't matter that much if the movie had much of a purpose or not in terms of the timeline it is set in. As a movie itself and as a story for Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, it actually does a pretty good job in my opinion. There are other stories I would have chosen that would have made for a much better film, like the Budapest story that Black Widow and Hawkeye are in. I would have preferred that as a better Black Widow movie and have this sort of be a sequel. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it. David Harbour is another highlight in my opinion and steals the show in many scenes with his relationship with him and his daughters. And he's just a joy to see. And his opening scene in which we see him in the very beginning and when we see him later in the prison setting, he was fantastic and I loved his performance. Overall, I do have to say that Black Widow is a pretty good movie. Cate Shortland did a pretty good job directing the human elements, the more story-driven elements in which the characters are interacting with one another and sharing stuff about each other in a dinner table. That's my favorite thing in the entire film. That is when the movie shines. When it's action heavy, it is good, but Marvel is always really good with the human elements in their stories. And I think that's why I felt like I enjoyed this movie a little more than some other people. I can understand why this will be some people's least favorites in the MCU. And in my opinion, it's not the best. It's not even close. But it's definitely not one of the worst. It's more of an Iron Man 3, Thor 1, Captain America 1 type movie. Good enough, but it's not going to blow everyone's mind. But it's a pretty good movie and I would definitely recommend it. And I'm going to give Black Widow a B+. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.